my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Everything Went Black podcast. Karl and I march forward in our endeavor to explore the worlds of Karl Edward Wagner. This is another episode of Darkness Weaves. Karl and I are starting the next novel in the Kane saga, The Dark Crusade. So enjoy. Before we get going, I want to shout out the other horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, an elite group of content creators that we call ourselves brothers to. Kicking things off every other Monday, we've got Horror Wolf 666, brought to you by Brandon Legion. Brandon and I are also bandmates in Abraxas Horn, so check that out. Up next on Tuesday, we've got the finest extreme metal podcast in the land, Into the Necrosphere, brought to you by Jackie Smith. Wednesday is a double shot day. Of course, it's Everything Went Black, as well as Iblis Manifestations, brought to you by Cheyenne of the great band Trivax. Thursday is Necro Thursday. The Necromaniacs horror podcast drops, where I, along with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid, bring you the best in horror movie analysis. Thursday is also day one of Soul Knocks, brought to you by my collaborator, Karl Edward. Friday, Mike Scandato's brother, John Draper, brings us Spitball Media. Saturday, well, you're on your own on Saturday. That's a day off. But Sunday, Karl, the sinister minister, Hikara, brings you day two of Soul Knocks. If you like the show, that's great. I'm happy to have you aboard. But if you want to take it one step further, you can join the Everything Went Black Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to the bonus content. For $5 a month, you get the bonus content plus early access to every episode. And for $25 a month, you can become a sponsor. I am the man who once was Orted, called bandit and outlaw by other men. I am that man no longer. A god has entered into me, and his will is my will. My words are his words. Listen to me, for I am Orted Ak Seti, the prophet of Sataki. The world of light is doomed, and the gods of light shall perish with it. And the children of light shall be utterly consumed in their fall. Before light there was darkness. Before order there was chaos. Light and order are fragile abnormalities in the natural state of the cosmos. They cannot long endure. The gods of darkness and chaos are far older and vastly more powerful. Against their wisdom and strength, the usurper gods must fail. All right, so we have the next Kane novel, which The Dark Crusade. That's the name of the book that we're about to embark on. So so far, as usual, as expected, the book is living up to its expectations. I think.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that it's very different from Bloodstone. Like
Yeah.
I feel like Karl Edward Wagner, even with the Kane stories, never really repeated himself. He's always like trying new things, new approaches for each story. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, even it's like he uses Kane almost as this, sort of canvas to express all these different types of weird fiction, science fiction, horror. There's even some Western elements, and then just sort of like, political, like cloak and dagger kind of, behind the scenes, like, stuff like that too. There's a lot of that, I think, in this book so far.
Yeah, and I think the this one like uh Kane so far is like just kind of like a shadowy presence, like he's there, like, and it's setting up obviously like the conflict of the story, I think, right? But
Yeah.
um, I think that's pretty. That's also pretty common with the Kane novel. I mean, in Bloodstone, there was big sections of Bloodstone where Kane wasn't even present. You know what I mean? But
Exactly.
his shadow kind of lingers over everything, like because he's like he's always plotting, he's always doing something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this time around we knocked out a pretty big chunk in the beginning just because most of it's exposition. And Kano is only in like three of the chapters, and so we went all the way up to, was it chapter 9 on this one?
Yeah, we read from the prologue to chapter 8. So
Chapter 8, yeah.
the next episode will start off on chapter 9.
Yeah, so it took that long to kind of give the setting for this story, and most of it, Kane is just sort of secondary. A lot of it has to do with just the setting and the exposition for what the drama that's going to be coming probably from chapter 9 onward.
Yeah, that's kind of necessary because I feel like you need to. He does have to set up the whole thing like, um, or basically, I mean, from the start, we're introduced to, um, what's his bandit leader's name?
Orted, Orted,
Orted.
yeah,
Yeah, and Orted gets like basically shanghaied by this cult, and the cult is dedicated to what's the god's name? Sataki.
yes, Ataki, yeah. Now Orted is kind of like, for lack of a better term, almost like this Robin Hood character. Not as like cool though. He's like kind of there's the implication that he's not quite successful and he's a little bit more of like a, kind of blundering sort of brigand, you know what I mean? So, but he does have some sort of populism, populist support from people because there's a city in Goldie that there's like a merchant class that runs the city, and all of the soldiers there, the people that defend it, are all mercenaries. And so there is this vibe of like an us and them vibe with the sort of, inhabitants of the city and then the rich overclass. So there's already like a dynamic setup where they kind of need to have some, or they're looking for someone to champion them in some ways. And by default, Orted, because he sort of robs from the rich, is like this kind of hero to some of the inhabitants of the city.
Yeah, but he's just had a big setback, which
Yeah.
they get the city guard or whatever have like ambushed him, but he managed to get away. But the priest of Sataki told him that I think they basically are like, we'll hide you, but they end up like knocking him out, and he comes to you on like an altar.
So so now what's interesting about this too is there's that's the the tower, there's like the Black Tower, which in the town, the fortress is called Seti, but the tower is older than the city, right? So it's like one of our favorite sort of archetypes in these stories where there's like an ancient structure that predates the city and the city was built around it. And there's some kind of magical presence to that, some sort of ancient, arcane vibe to this place. And so
Yeah.
that's where the Statakis they sort of sort of hang out there, and that's the lair. That's another unpronounceable name that he has here. The lair of Isilis.
Yeah.
Isilisil.
Yeah, and the basically the god Sataki is a god of chaos and darkness essentially. So he's like this
Yeah.
ancient primeval god who used to be reign and worship in the land but kind of got forgotten, but this one cult follows them, but they all wear like black robes, and they they also can manipulate shadows, as we find out. So
Yeah, it's kind of cool. That's a very cool ability to have, I think.
yeah, like they're very like much like this kind of primeval dark like void. They're like void worship. They're like abyssal.
Yeah,
Void
totally.
worshippers, basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So Orted becomes their instrument in some ways. Like in the prologue, we find him. He's strapped down to this altar. There's a mirror above him, and he looks up in the mirror and he sees himself, and he's got all these symbols on his body, and he's basically turned into the undead instrument of Sataki at the end of the prologue here.
yeah, like there's like a shadow that emerges from the mirror. There's like portal that yeah, and basically yeah, he's essentially like the host for Sataki essentially.
Yeah.
And what I thought is interesting is when the cult like in the next chapter essentially the cult is like builds like a big crowd around them and is like preaching, and then when they show Orted, it's not like they pretend like Orted. They literally say that he is Sataki, the bearer of Sataki. Like he's not. They're kind of saying he's still Orted, but he's not really. You know what I mean? And they don't really pretend that he is. You know what I mean? Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, he's like, they pretty much put it right out there that he's this deity almost, like he's like the living god in some ways.
Yeah, like in Robert Chambers, like there's nothing worse than being in the arms of the living God. I love this stuff that he says here. The world of light is doomed, and the gods of light shall perish with it, and the children of light shall be utterly consumed in their fall. Before light there was darkness, before order there was chaos. Light and order are fragile abnormalities in the natural state of the cosmos. They cannot long endure. The gods of darkness and chaos are far older and vastly more powerful. Against their wisdom and strength, the usurper gods must fall. And yeah, like I just love to see it. The children of light shall perish with their gods, but the gods of darkness shall preserve all those who honor them. Our world shall be reborn in darkness, and there shall be a rebirth for all who have pledged their souls to darkness. For the children of darkness there shall be a new age, and they shall share in the spoils of victory. They shall know the pure freedom of chaos, and they shall themselves live as gods. No pleasure shall be denied them, no longing shall pass unfulfilled. Vanquished gods shall be their slaves, fallen goddesses their concubines, and the children of light shall be as dirt beneath the feet of the children of darkness. It's like that's some straight up black metal shit there.
I was gonna say it's like Legions of the Blacklight or something, like it's like the John dissection style shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty awesome. Like, so you can kind of understand why in the end Kane throws his lot in with them at that start at least.
Yeah, it's. I mean, once again, the eternal cynic is probably to him though. It's yet another upstart religion, following some deity that he remembers, from the distant past, and they'll come and go and rise and fall, and it'll be fun to see how this thing turns out. That's always the sense I get with anything that Kane, whenever he gets like involved in any of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like Satakis, whatever. Sataki is like an ancient god, but Kane's been around probably longer than him. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
You know,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Orted proclaims himself Orted Ak Seti. That's his new name. That's his new black metal name, actually. As
Yeah.
the the prophet of Sataki.
It it'd be kind of funny to to do a black metal band and even use that as your pseudonym.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. So at this demonstration, or actually, it doesn't even start out as a demonstration. It's when I imagine it, it's like when you go into a city and you see like a bunch of religious fundamentalists preaching. It might start out as like a small group, and then there's like the people of the city start paying attention to it, starts riling the crowd up. You know, the
Yeah.
fact that he started out as this kind of like Robin Hood-esque sort of guy. They're unhappy with the ruling class. He's speaking to them on this level, this populist level, and everyone's getting like roused up at this point. And it's only a matter of time before violence breaks out.
Yeah, and then like how it always happens, it's the cops who basically who spark it off because the city guard are like, well, we got to break this up. We can't do. And once they start trying to break it up, is when the violence breaks out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so they're like a catalyst in this whole riot that ensues.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it always happens, right? Like you'll have like a group of people in a protest, and then as soon as the cops roll in, like with like the tear gas and shit, all the hell breaks loose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they show up to like bust heads.
Yeah, and that's when the actual riot starts. So it's always the cops who instigate the riots.
But this is sort of what galvanizes the crowds. Like this is the beginning of the rise of Orted, Axeti, and the Satakis, sort of in some ways, because they kind of originate from this city, in Seti, and they have their temple there in that black tower. But this is like the spread, like the sort of momentum kind of starts from this outbreak of this mob.
Yeah, and the other thing that of course we have to mention is that Orted has no shadow.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man
he
with no
doesn't cast.
shadow.
That's actually the name of the chapter. The man who
Yeah,
casts no shadow. So
yeah, and then so this kind of sets it up like it's like a populist movement, and we'll swing back around to this, but the next chapter, the man who feared shadows. So it's kind of an interesting. The titles like one is like the man who has no shadow, a man who feared shadows, and this is where we get introduced to Kane and the situation that he's currently in some
yeah.
uh,
So
southern kingdom.
yeah, there's a city to the south called Sandot Neri, and we don't run into Kane just yet. There's this guy Tapper who actually is was hired by Kane to gather information. Now down here in Sandot Neri, Kane there's a Kane is a mercenary. Of course, he rises up through the ranks and he becomes this prominent leader. And there's two different factions. There's like the Reds and the Blues. Okay. And a lot of it has to do with there's a division between the king. He doesn't have a male heir. He has a daughter, um, and Esketra is the name of his daughter. And then there's like a cousin or something or nephew that is the next in line for the throne. Um, and so there's like, there's a controversy as there's a potential for grabbing power. So then there's these two factions, the Reds and the Blues.
Yeah, and Kane's of course made an enemy because the king made him the general above what's his name Jarvo. So now Jarvo's like his mortal rival, and I'm guessing that Jarvo. The Blues are the ones supporting the queen, the daughter, right? And the Reds are the
Yeah,
ones supporting the cousin.
yeah,
And of course, Kane's throwing his lot in with the cousin, and he's like basically like leading the Reds essentially. So
yeah. So he's
yeah,
sort of on the opposing faction here, and Jarbo and Esketra have this like secret love affair that's going on, which they don't want that to get out because she's obviously the princess, and he's just a part of the army essentially. He's like a military leader.
Yeah. There's something about a lot of this that reminds me of a lot of the kind of Italian medieval political. Like there was a lot of like in Genoa, for example, there was like constant fighting in between these factions who.
Yeah.
For that one, I think it was like they backed one pope or the other or something like, and they were like fighting and killing each other in the streets, for, or stuff like that. There was always these kind of like political infighting in Italian politics in Middle Ages, and I think that's kind of a bit of what Wagner's drawing on in this. You know what I mean?
It's interesting you say that because that political infighting went all the way up into the 20th century, really. Then you had Garibaldi's red shirts, which maybe that's where he got the term, the Reds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and yeah, there's definitely that's part of what made it hard for Italy to have like a unified country for so long. Like because each city state was like ruled as like its own thing, and each city state would have like their own infighting and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So I get the feeling that it's kind of like this a little bit, and yeah, I mean, apparently, as far as geographically, all the stuff that's going on with the cult of Satakis and Orted stuff is going on north, and apparently there's a big plain, kind of like a steppe or something in between those countries and the countries that we're in now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's like a natural division between the north and the southern lands.
and these southern lands are definitely built around cavalry and stuff because they live next to like this big like steppe land. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So now Kane, of course, is scheming, and the whole reason that he has Tapper in his employ is that there's a diagram that shows all the secret passages to get into the castle. So he has bestowed Tapper the responsibility of getting that diagram, bringing it to Kane so Kane can copy it, by hand, redraw it, and Tapper has to bring the chart back to the castle before anyone finds it out that it's missing. So he's like this kind of behind the scenes, subterfuge sort of guy.
Yeah, and then he's making use of the Tapper's making use of I think the Queen's like maid or something like that, and
Yeah.
and I think part of it is that Kane is planning on exposing the relationship between Jarvo and the princess. And so I wonder if part of what he wants to do, like I just wonder what his ultimate goal is. Is he gonna try to, because he knows that they're sneaking in, the Jarvo sneaking in the palace through these things. I wonder if he's gonna try to sneak in and like his idea was to surprise them and like I don't know, like I don't know what his goal is, but
Yeah.
Kane always wants to know secret stuff though. If he knows how to get around in a castle,
My take on it was that yes, I agree. That might have been his plan, was to go in there and find out about them and become knowledgeable about their liaison and use that information to kind of blackmail them into something where he would somehow put himself in a more influential position or something like that, or power or riches or whatever.
Yeah, I think that was his plan.
So the thing about Tapper, he's the man who fears fears the shadows because he experienced he was able to escape the Satakis, like because he comes from a different city, and now the Sataki menace is growing, and they're overtaking all these smaller villages and towns and places, and the place that he lives is attacked by them, and he joined them, but then betrayed them. So he believes that the Satakis are after him. So he's afraid of the dark. Basically, he wants light. They even make comment about how he picks this one particular inn, the Red Gables, because they have a certain type of lock on the door. It's very secure. He doesn't leave his room until it's fully daylight. He's like very, very afraid of the dark.
And he's got like a million candles and like three different like oil, like
Yeah.
a bunch of oil lanterns all going at the same time, so there's no shadow at all in the room. So
Yeah, it's like super bright in there. Yeah.
yeah, and uh, yeah, the basically Jarvo figured out that they basically figured out that tortured the maid to get the information that she had given the map to them, and so he's figured out the guy is Kane's. So his goal was to come and surprise Tapper and take him in for questioning, basically, so that he could use that against Kane. But Kane's there, and so Kane attempts to lie his way out, but
Yeah, he tries, but it doesn't really work out so well.
no, and then he's like thinking about how he has to kill Tapper too, so that Tapper
Yeah.
won't get divulge his stuff. But he in the kind of fight that ensues, he basically throws one of the oil lanterns into Jarvo's face, so he becomes Two-Face basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Harvey Dent.
Yeah, and then jumps out the window, and then they go to like get Tapper, and when they go in, because Jarvo had been like to try to like break Tapper, he started like extinguishing all the lights in the room.
Yeah.
So all the light went out, and when they go in, Tapper is indeed dead, and they say that it looks like his shadow is strangling him, which is pretty creepy.
Now, one thing to mention about Jarvo is that they mentioned about how handsome he is originally, but he's also kind of short too.
Yeah.
He's definitely like a smaller guy, but he's like very, very handsome. Now, with the flames burning up half his face, he might not be so handsome right now.
Yeah. And I think it's funny too, because when he tries to see the queen, like she's really like dismissive to him and stuff like that. He's trying to be like, oh, it's just because like she doesn't want anybody to find out about us and whatnot. But
Yeah, because she basically says, I think we should cool it off a little bit,
yeah. But you're like, I think he's just trying to not realize that now that he's burned, like she's probably not into him anymore. He's done all this shit for her, and she just kind of throws him away. You know what I mean? But yeah. So, and this is when at this point too, like King kind of disappears because he thinks that they got Tapper and the jig's up basically.
Yeah.
But really, Jarvo like thinks like the only reason that Kane left is because they thought we got Tapper. If he had known that the guy died, he could have like waited it out. Like he didn't really have, 'cause we didn't have any proof against him. So
Yeah.
But Kane left anyway. So
And they also seal over these like hidden passageways in the castle. So, because Kane did copy the map and then he burned up the original. So they sealed over some of those passageways. So even if he were to come back, he would not be able to get through.
yeah, exactly. And that's when we basically we find out that the coldest Sataki has basically taken over all these kind of northern lands. Like it's like a virus that keeps spreading, right? And
Yeah.
we get kind of insight into how they're spreading when in one town, right, where you have the what's the lady's name?
Errol, the hooker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they come and hand her like a weird dark black stone, which is cool. Like definitely seems like a nod to some Lovecraftian shit there,
Sure.
And she throws into the gate, and basically all these shadows erupt out of it. It's really pretty horrific. Like definitely a very dark horror scene, which I really like.
Yeah. And she chooses basically the shadows are like you either choose life, you choose to die, or you join the way of the Satakis. So it's sort of like you got to either you're in or you're out. There's no prisoners. You either perish or you become one of us, basically. So that's how their ranks start swelling.
It's kind of another interesting parallel in this story to history is to the rise of Islam in the Middle East, because when that was the same thing that they did. Like when they started spreading, they would go into places and basically be like, either convert or we like gonna behead you essentially. So like I think that might be a little bit. He's drawing a little bit on that as well. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like it's like a supernatural eldritch version of that essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So after this, we kind of catch up with Kane briefly. There's this place called Burns Cove, and because of all this activity with the Satakis, people are trying to like leave and go to somewhere else where they can escape. And there's this guy who has a boat, Captain Stern. I don't know. There's a lot of different. These names are hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
And he's got a boat called the Cormorant, and for 10 marks, he'll take you to the safe city of Cruson. However, he's just basically taking your money and throwing you overboard for the sharks to eat you.
Yeah, Kane lets them know. But that's how he finds out about the Sataki as well.
Yeah, and this is how Kane learns about this scourge of this, zealots, these religious zealots that follow Sataki, and he learns about this stuff going on in the northern lands through this part of the story.
Yeah. And then we get from this point, then essentially the Orted sends like a horde down across the plains to attack the southern lands. And we get like essentially a massacre of his entire ranks, because the cavalry, like the whole army from the south, like goes and meets them, and just because Orted's army is literally not really an army, it's just a fucking bunch of like basically mob people that have been kind of like organized, kind of, right?
Yeah, they're more of like an unruly mob, and the people from the southern Jarvos people are legit soldiers, trained, cavalry. They got like weapons and tactics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so they basically ride up. Basically they just massacre the fucking Orted's horde. Like they literally don't have it. There's like very few of them left alive after they get done with them, which is.
And Orted's not there. He's not even part of the whole, because they were looking for him essentially too. They were hoping that they could take him out. Now the other thing to mention about Orted is that he seems to be invulnerable too. The arrows go through him and nothing happens essentially, as well as not casting a shadow.
Yeah, because earlier in the story they shot arrows at him and he just pulled him out, right? Because he's not really human. He's he's like a shadow entity, like inhabiting a corpse, basically.
Yeah.
So it's not like nothing can really like killing the body probably wouldn't even kill him. Like utterly destroying the body maybe will send him back to the void, but it's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like with the ideas of like the fallen angels when they go into the underworld, when they try to like create life the way God, the Christian God created life but it's like this kind of perverted version of life that is like instilled into dead bodies essentially. That's what this reminds me of a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's almost like the idea of like the vampire or something as well. Like the old idea of a demon inhabiting a rotting corpse, but it's kind of like that. It's like this like shadow entities like infuse this body, so he's not mortal in the common way. And which is kind of funny because this is the second thing I've read this week that has a similar idea, because they do something similar. David Gemmell does something similar in Winter Warriors. So
David Gemmell, man, it's like you turned me on to him. I'm 2 books in right now, and I got definitely looking to finish up the Draenei trilogy, the first set of books. I got the first 2 out of the way, and I think Waylander is the third one.
Yeah, I think Waylander.
Yeah, so I'm going to be hitting that one soon.
Yeah, they're great books. Like I said, later on in the year, once you've read more and stuff, and I've reread some more, like I definitely want to do an episode about Gemmell on Soul Knox, because I feel like I definitely want it. I'd like more people to read him. I think more people should read him because he's just like one of the best. Much like Wagner, he's just one of the best writers in this genre, and it's like nobody reads him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
At least
he's got a ton of work out there too.
Yeah, I actually just picked up some stuff of his today that I haven't read yet. It's not the Roman one, but it's the one that's like kind of Celtic oriented.
Yeah, that's right. Because like aside from his epic fantasy, he writes a lot of historical stuff that takes place in actual history too, right?
Yeah, I think the series is called let me double check. It's they only had 2 of the novels at the store, but I picked them up. It's called the Regante series. And yeah, I picked up Sword and Storm and Ravenheart, which is 1 and 3. Unfortunately, they have 2, but it looks pretty cool. I think it's Celtic, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It might be like it might be kind of like a fantasy world as well, but it's like a fantasy version of like the Celtic stuff, I think. So, but it looks pretty interesting. So
maybe similar to what Howard did with like some of his quote unquote historical, dark fiction.
Yeah, like Bran McMorn and stuff. Yeah,
Bran McMorn, Cormac McCart, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. So I haven't read those yet. I found 2 of them today. So be interesting to get into some other stuff of his. But I mean, the Draenei stuff is just so good. Like Winter Warriors is like, I think probably one of my favorites now. Like it was just, it's like you're getting into like a fantasy novel and you're getting like meditations on like aging and death and like like what the nature of like man's like to be a man and particularly as you get older, like and stuff. But that's like it's like there's like this kind of like melancholy like kind of meditative side to it.
Well, in the 2 Gemmell novels that I read, I think I even mentioned to you, I was like, yeah, there's like some real emotional aspects to it. I mean, it's very, there's a lot of action, it's really well written, but there's like parts of it because you connect so deeply with the characters, you know what I mean? The characters are so heroic and likable, and even the villains are heroic too, you know what I mean? That
Exactly, yeah.
like everyone's like a shade of something, like even like the villains aren't all bad. There's like aspects to them that are good, and you get connected to these people, and then when they die, you really feel it. And then also there is a little bit of that in at least in those first 2 novels that I read, where they talk about just like that kind of nihilistic life, it not exist, the questions about the afterlife and things like that gets covered in some of his books too, at least the ones I've read.
Yeah, definitely. I get Winter Warriors is like really because most of the main characters are aging warriors. They're all like in their 50s or early 60s, so they're like kind of like looking at like what are we gonna do next type of thing, and it's kind of a. I think he was probably around that age when he wrote it, so you can tell he's probably putting some of his thoughts into that. But that's one I love about Gemmell, and Gemmell can make you like really like a character in like a paragraph. Like there's a part in Winter Warriors where you kind of get the insight into this one character, and you almost think he's gonna like become a main character for a second, and then he just fucking dies, Like,
Yeah.
but like, I just love the fact that he can really make you like a character in like a paragraph, which is really rare. There's some authors who write whole novels where you don't even give a fuck about some of the characters. You know what I mean? Like,
actually, Lovecraft's kind of like that. It's like the characters are almost incidental. It's more about the concepts and the atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. Lovecraft is definitely like that. Like, I think it just depends on what the writer's trying to do. With Gemmell, I think he's like really trying to like get and like you said, one thing I like about Gemmell is that he doesn't really have like ridiculous like the kind of this kind of villains. Like one thing I don't like you remember like Pan's Labyrinth, where he had that like fascist guy who's just like he's like almost like so evil that it's kind of like cartoonish.
Caricature, like
Yeah.
cartoonish. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and not in a good way. Like, for me, I don't like that character in that movie because I'm like, he's like too much. You know what I mean? He's like too evil, and I think that I like when you get the kind of nuance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's always interesting when there's layers to the characters, whenever it's too archetypical, it's just like not interesting, it's like it's very two-dimensional.
Unless you're doing in a kind of a fun way, like if you have like a Skeletor or something, right? Like that can be kind of fun, like because he's like cartoonishly evil, but he's like in in a kind of primordial way, right? But he's not like cartoonishly cruel, And I think that's
Right.
something that I find I don't really like sometimes is when you have a villain who's just cartoonishly cruel and like kind of almost annoying. Unfortunately, Guillermo del Toro does that a lot because he did the same thing in Shape of Water too.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that movie quite a bit. I thinking about revisiting it again.
The fish sex thing is weird.
Definitely weird.
Having sex with the gill man, I don't know if I can get behind that.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, the to kind of finish out, like one of my favorite chapters in this whole thing that we read is when Kane is writing, like he finds like where all the guys are massacred.
Yeah.
And I just love this image. He's just like one dark writer, like riding across like this field of bodies, basically field of dead. And yeah, like he says that, like he writes, he had looked upon 1,000 such battlefields. It might be that he would look upon 1,000 such more. The rising breeze moaned a ghost song through the waving grassland, and his death-scented breath fanned his billowing red cloak. Following the trail of death, Kane dwindled against the far horizon. I just love that.
Yeah, that's a cool section. Real quick, so the previous chapter, the one where there's the battle,
Yeah.
title of that chapter is Red Harvest, a band that I quite like. So I'm curious if they might have got their name from this.
Yeah, either that or the Dashiell Hammett novel as well.
This is true.
The Red Harvest, Dashiell Hammett, which is a very good novel. I don't know if maybe they didn't get it from either one. Who knows? But I don't know where they got their name from, actually.
Yeah, great band though.
Yeah, they're really good. I really like the Greater Darkness album that you turned me on to.
My favorite one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my favorite one.
Yeah, that's you actually were the one who turned me on to them because I knew about them, but I never listened to them. And then you told me about them, and I think you played the tracks from that album on Everything Went Black, and I was like, this is sick.
I found out about them by accident, actually. It was like years and years and years ago, when Tombs was on Relapse, we would, whenever we played in Philly, we'd go to hang out in the office, or meet up with those guys before the show, and we'd always go into the warehouse when the warehouse was part of their office, and you could always get stuff for free. Like, I don't know if this is a secret or not, but it's like they would always give us a box of promos of all the death metal records that were coming out. But then, like, if you looked for something that wasn't in that box, usually Gordon would just like give it to you. Someone, I don't even remember who it was like, you got to check this band out, Red Harvest, right? And that's how I found out about the band.
Were they on Relapse?
That's a good question. Maybe one record was on there,
I'm not sure.
That's a really good question. I'll have to look into that.
But
I've been a fan ever since that day, like in 2009 or whatever the hell that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember hearing about them in the early 2000s, like, seeing their name as part of like the kind of Norwegian scene. And I'm just looking real quick if they had released anything on Raps. But I never actually really listened to them, and then until you turn me on to A Greater Darkness in particular, because I think that album is like really sick.
Yeah, that was on Season of Mist.
It doesn't look like they released anything on Relapse.
No, but in their warehouse they had the distro, so they had records by
Oh
all
yeah,
every label. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. It's funny because I haven't really listened to their early stuff. Like the early stuff on their first album came out on Black Mark Production, which was Corathon's label.
Yeah, yeah, and the early stuff is like almost like industrial. No, it's actually no wait. The early stuff is like thrash, and then they do have like some records that have like electronics and like industrial kind of stuff on it. And yeah, so and then there's I don't know, they're just such a they got such a deep layered thing that goes on with their music. Like there's a lot, you can tell there's a lot of just influences and like cool stuff, and they're just you can tell the guys are into like great bands too.
The thing I like about A Greater Darkness is I can really hear the Fields and the Philem influence on it.
That's why it's my favorite one. The one
Yeah.
that I got from Relapse though is Cold Dark Matter, which I don't know what label put that out, but that's the one. It looked like an industrial record. Like the album cover looked industrial because of the font and everything and the colors on it, but it was like similar to the other material.
So it was put out on Nocturnal Art Productions, which was the label of Ishan's brother-in-law who run Limbonic Art.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
which all the Limbonic Art stuff's put on there and everything. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, great band. I listen to them regularly, actually.
Yeah. It'd be cool if they got their name from the Wagner story, but who knows?
All right, so Kane's checking out this battlefield. He's that there's that scene of him riding off in the horizon where he's like small compared to the scale of carnage.
Yeah, and then we see Orteg, why do I say whatever his name is?
Orted Accedi.
Orted, yeah, not Orteg, Orted. And it seems like it's interesting because it seems like part of his mortal thing is there as well, right? Like
Yeah.
we're kind of like put aside, but it says like he's now been like now that he has the God inside of him, he feels like these more passions and stuff like that. Like he has a God's passions, basically. So he's basically throwing a fucking fit because his horde got destroyed, even though he didn't listen to any of his generals or anything.
What's also interesting to that they talk about here is that he's grown soft. Like they comment about how prior to this he had he's this hardened battle hardened body, but now that the sort of the excesses of this new role that he's playing, he's softened himself up. Like he's not as like jacked as he used to be or ripped or whatever. Like he's got probably like a little paunch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds like he's kind of this god like enjoys like luxuries and stuff. So he's been enjoying his vices a little too much.
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure there's some pleasures of the flesh, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So he's getting a little soft and so it's kind of interesting, and he's basically throwing a fit about because he feels that the whole world needs to be overtaken, essentially. Like he wants to dominate the whole world with the cult with the shadows, and it seems like the god really does want to create like a new world of darkness, essentially, right? So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool concept. It's very like we said earlier, very black metal. Very very Legions of the Dark Light. Very dissection. There's there's a vibe to this whole goal that they have.
yeah, definitely. Like, and the way that the cult is described in this chapter and some of the other ones is very black metal. Like I was like, you want to put on some like evil fucking sinister black metal reading some of those parts because it's just like talking about like darkness and they're like temples and stuff like seem really like very creepy and dark and awesome.
Yeah, no, it's all the good stuff. So at the end of this chapter, Kane rolls up onto Orted, and he's basically, "I'm Kane. You need me."
Yeah, because he says you're defeated because you need heavy cavalry, and he's like, who are you? And I'm Kane. You need me. So it's like it's like of course Kane's throwing his lot in with like the evil, like the dark god, right?
Yeah, yeah. He's not trying to help the good guys. You know what I mean? But there's
No.
also a lot of it, some of it too. It's like interesting because there's a couple thoughts I had on this whole thing. Like, first and foremost, there's like within the material world, like there's his rivalry with Jarbo, who clearly is in the opposition to Orted Accedi, and probably on some level, Kane, with his like centuries of life experience, assumes that, Orted, he'll be able to sort of dethrone him and take over this whole, dark legion here. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's kind of like, that's like his MO. You know what I mean? Like even back in Bloodstone, like he's playing around with these like cosmic forces that ultimately were mightier than him, but he's fearless in that sense that he will stand against something that is, enormous and, on a cosmic level. And then also because of his, ages of experience in roaming the earth, he definitely, I'm sure he's familiar with this cult. He's probably views them as upstarts, and he's like, oh, these guys again, that they were, I remember them from back in the day, and now they're hiding somewhere. Now they seem to be on the uprise, but their whole trip's going to come to pass too. They'll rise and they'll fall, and maybe there's something in it for me too.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about Kane is that if you notice, anytime like a place like kind of rejects him, he always manages to destroy it.
Yeah, that's
Like,
exactly. Yeah,
like have you noticed that? Like every time, like either A, like when he's just kind of done with his situation, he'll like betray somebody and destroy a city, or like. So I wouldn't be surprised if his main goal is just to take out Jarvo and the whole like the whole southern like country, just because out of pettiness, kind of, you know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. His ego is guiding him through all this stuff. And it's like, and we, it's the same themes though of just boredom in some ways. Like this cosmic eternal life that he's leading, where what are challenges to him? Like he's seen such extremes in his lifespan, and even these like ominous dark forces to him are probably just like, oh yeah, these guys, they'll come and go. I'm not too concerned about any of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And the other aspect of Kane as well, as we've seen, is that he could also attempt to then play both sides, right? Like just
Right,
like he did in
exactly.
Bloodstone. Like he can go
Yeah,
present himself to Orted, do all this stuff, and then come and present himself to the king and everybody in the south, and be like, hey, I got this inside knowledge about, and then play both sides and see which comes out the winner. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Like, it's hard to say what Kane's gonna do. Like, he'll do anything really.
yeah. My prediction too is that he eventually has sex with with the princess there, Esketra, at some
If he
point.
if he hasn't already.
That's probably like, yeah, if he hasn't already, he will, or
Yeah,
or he'll
like
do it again. He'll do it again.
like the queen said something like to the guy, like there was that because Kane was the general before Jarvo, and there's a part where she's like, you should go up to north and check this stuff out, and he's like, there, whatever, and she's like, well, that is what Kane would have done, and you're like, oh, that's cold.
Yeah.
The Yeah, and I think that the one thing that we got to point out is that Reflections of the Winter of My Soul is a sequel to this. So we kind of know how it all turns out, but
Basically, yeah.
but we don't know how it's going to. I don't know I don't remember what that said at the start. I just know that it's going to end up with Kane like disappearing out of the situation and them trying to hunt him down, right? So
Yeah, basically, because he's like on the run in that, or he's being pursued at that point of that story. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, so off to a good start, man. It took a minute to get, but the next, I think starting on chapter 9, we're going to really get into the meat of the story.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it's all going to play out. And I think one thing I appreciate is that after the kind of like sci-fi craziness of Bloodstone, it's kind of nice to have a story that's a bit more eldritch and
Yeah.
dark and sinister. You know what I mean?
But even it was interesting in Bloodstone too, because the thing I like about that style too is like technology as sorcery. I always get very into that. That's even as a kid, that was one of the things that I dug about like Chariots of the Gods. That when I was very young, reading that about how like there's these legends of gods and stuff, but they're actually ancient astronauts and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And all that was very interesting in a story and how the science and sorcery come together and everything. And
Yeah.
but it's nice that Wagner is going to try to do something different with this one, and then I'm assuming Darkness Weaves is going to be another thing, totally
Yeah.
different. So
Yep. Exactly. So now in related sword and sorcery, or actually in this case, it's more science fantasy. Uh, Robert E. Howard stuff, some Robert E. Howard related news. So there's two new volumes that came out recently. There's the Adventures in Science Fantasy by Robert E. Howard. It's a collection of his sci-fi stories. Now, you might be like, well, who cares, right? We're here talking about sword and sorcery and epic fantasy and stuff. I'm like, well, hold on one second. A very important novella is included in Adventures in Science Fantasy, and that's the Almeric novella. So for a long time, that book that's been out of print. I know that it's in Kindle. If they have it on I have it on Kindle actually because I reread it a couple of years ago, and so now it's in print again in this Adventures in Science Fantasy,
yeah,
and
and
yeah,
that's one that you introduced me to, and you actually sent me extra copy you had, and
yeah, I have three versions of that.
and it was really cool. And then shortly after I read the one you sent me, I found a old '70s paperback of it, at which I bought to put in my collection. Like
Yeah,
the so yeah, it's pretty, that's a really cool like kind of story of a kind of savage, like a dude who's kind of like a boxer guy who gets taken
yeah,
and who maybe he dies and goes to another planet or just goes to another planet. It's hard to say, but he goes to this like savage planet and he's like in the modern world he's like totally out of place. He feels totally like uncomfortable. Once he goes to like the savage planet, he's like totally like he totally fits in, right? And that's a
yeah.
pretty
He's
cool
more
part
in
of the
his
story.
element. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's I feel like a lot of authors from that time in the 20th century, they all had their sword and planet stories. You know what I mean? This is like the master of that genre is Edgar Rice Burroughs with the John Carter novels and John Carter stories, the Barsoom stuff. And so everyone, it seems like this is Robert E. Howard's attempt at doing that, and it's good. It's his own, definitely. It only in concept is it similar to John Carter. You know what I mean? This is like a completely different vibe than that. You know?
Yeah, this is definitely much more Conan in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, it's like
Yeah.
like definitely like a Sword and Planet with Conan. Basically.
Yeah.
And this collection is put out by the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press, and I don't have you do you have any of the other books that they've done? I don't have any of them. These are the
No.
first ones I'm getting actually.
Yeah, and I need to order both of those, and then they're also putting out his weird westerns, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the collection of Western stories. This is called Western Tales, and that's got his weird Western stuff in there, like Carl mentioned, and it's that's another sort of side genre that I think is very interesting. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
it's
that's definitely some. I'm excited about that. Those are brand new. They came out just a couple weeks ago. I ordered both of them, so they'll be showing up fairly soon.
Yeah, I guess it's not just weird westerns. It's like all of his western stuff. So
Yeah, it's all the
that
Western stuff, but some of it are
which
like horror tales.
yeah, which and the 646 pages, which is awesome.
It's
So
a big,
the
big book, man.
yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess he wrote a lot of westerns towards the end of his life, but they've been out of print forever. So I've always been really curious to read them. I've only really read his western horror stories that are in the horror stories of Robert E. Howard Del Rey collection, and I've always been curious to read his like just regular western stories, and I think he'd write really great westerns. So
Well, apparently in his later career, that was kind of like he was focusing a lot on writing Westerns, and we got to remember that Robert E. Howard was a pulp writer, so he, wrote for a living. It was a job for him. So, we love his Conan stories and his Call and, Solomon Kane, like all that stuff. But, he had these little bit more lesser known pieces that he wrote. But all of it is being published though by the Robert E. Howard Foundation. So there's other volumes in there, which I'm probably going to get eventually. And there's Spicy Adventures too. I don't know, I just saw that here. It's like, I guess those are, oh yeah, actually, I'm going to read something here. Some of these were, these are like the uncensored versions that apparently when they were published, they were so spicy that they had to edit some of it out. So the stories that appear in Spicy Adventures are unedited. So there you go.
there you go. Yeah, and that was like a term back then. It was spicy stories or whatever. Which meant like there was some titillation in them.
Yeah.
Which so definitely some of that in Conan, right? I mean, like
Yep. Oh yeah.
Zuthal of the Dusk, where you have like the one lady like strip the other one naked and like start whipping her.
Well, yeah. I mean that was like there's the gore novels too, which are like not Robert E. Howard at all, but he didn't write any of that stuff. But there's like that series of novels, the gore novel. It's like I have a few of those.
Yeah, they
You know what I'm
got
talking
real
about?
S and yeah, they got real S and M from what I heard from later on. Yeah,
What was the name of the guy who wrote those gore novels? Let me see. I have like
sure.
2 or 3 of them. I found them when I was at my parents recently. Yeah, John Norman. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. So as a young kid, I read these. Okay, like I have 3 of them. All right. I have the Tarnsman of Gore, the Outlaw of Gore, and the Nomads of Gore. All right. So these are, and I just read them as a kid who likes sword and sorcery. Right. But apparently that these novels were like really big with like the whole S&M crowd. Because most of the stories, there's like naked women getting beat up in there, like whipped and stuff and tied up. So yeah, that's like a big theme in that series.
yeah. It's funny like all the stuff back then like that.
Yeah.
uh, Another thing that I just saw came out is the Rogues in the House. They put out their Book of Blades Volume 3, which just came out. I still need to pick up the first 2, but they're on my cart to buy all 3 now. So
Yeah, definitely. I actually this is something that's interesting too, that the New Edge Sword of Sorcery series. It's like a crowd-funded periodical.
yeah,
So
that's the one I had sent you because I've listened to Rogues in the
yeah,
House. Yeah.
yep. So they have I joined their GoFundMe for that too. So there's like I put down some cash on the next 3 issues of that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I still need to pick up the first couple issues. You can buy them on Amazon, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But so
the New Edge
definitely
definitely is interesting. Yeah.
definitely go check that out though. If you guys are interested in that, you can still I think they got their goal. So yeah, they exceeded the goal. So that'll be coming out fairly soon. But yeah, the Robert E. Howard Foundation, we talk a lot about, like I said, all his Conan stuff, but he's got so much stuff. He's got like boxing stories. He's got, all sorts of like, pirates, high adventure kind of stuff too.
Yeah, because he would write to whatever he could sell to. So, and that's part of why, if you think about westerns, when Robert E. Howard killed himself in the 30s, that was the start of like the Westerns really taking off. You know what I mean? If he had lived, he probably could have had a really successful career as a Western writer, as like Westerns as his dominant thing. Like because in the 40s and 50s, it was the world was crazy for Westerns. You know what I mean? So like think about Louis L'Amour and stuff. You know, so and probably eventually, I would imagine Howard would eventually have returned to Conan and his sword and sorcery stuff later on too. I would imagine, but I could have imagined a world where Howard lived and he became like a Western writer, really, you know, writing like Western novellas like Leo Moore or something like that.
Yeah, no, totally. But yeah, so that's all good stuff. That's for all of us sword and sorcery fans.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna pick those up soon because, like I said, I've always been really curious, particularly really curious about his westerns. Like, you know, it's like, it's funny how much the Western genre has influenced sword and sorcery because David Gemmell also is like very influenced by Westerns. Like Louis L'Amour is like one of his favorite authors, you know. So it's like, it's when you get into Waylander, you're gonna really see some strong Western influence in that too. So it's like it's. I think it's because they're both telling stories of like a time period of people kind of wandering around big open spaces, and you can set archetypical type of stories in them and stuff. I'm not, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think the two things kind of lend you know, to each other. They build off of each other in some ways. I haven't read a lot of Western novels or short stories, but I've watched a lot of the kind of you know, 70s Westerns that you know, like the Sam Peckinpah stuff and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up being big into Westerns, obviously growing up in Colorado, like it's hard not to. But my dad was a huge fan of like, you know, the Searchers and all that kind of stuff. And so I read a lot of Western stuff growing up, and every once in a while I get in like one of those kind of modes, and I have like I have like huge stacks of like old 60s Westerns, like because when my friend Jack owned his bookstore he had here, at one point he bought like he went to like a estate sale where somebody just had like a million of these like old paperback, not like a lot of Westerns and like pulp novels, and I picked up, he was selling them for real cheap, and I picked up a ton of them, like just various things, like also like the kind of like noir pulp stuff from like the 50s, as well as like just tons of these kind of novels, Westerns, and they're a lot of fun to read a lot of those, you know.
Definitely. I mean, they're not your typical Westerns, but the Cormac McCarthy stuff I read, like the Blood Meridian, All the Pretty Horses, Cities of the Plain, like that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? They're modern Westerns. They're not necessarily like, I mean, they're not from the pulp era, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. William Moore actually has some pretty good books. I mean, he released like, there's like 100 William Moore books, I think, but like he's got some real good ones. Zane Grey's classic, like Riders of Purple Dawn, and Max Brand. Max Brand is probably one of my favorite. Yeah, he's probably like my favorite. I have a collection of short stories that he did where, and he actually, what Max Brand would do sometimes is he would be take inspiration from folk tales, he said. So he'd take like a folk tale story and then try to like rework it into like a Western, basically.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. I'll have to show you that book. It's pretty cool. So yeah, you got there's some real good ones, guys, out there. And of course you also got like Lonesome Dove, if you want like a doorstop Western. That's really great.
Which one is that now?
Lonesome Dove, Larry McMurtry. Yeah, that's like an 800-page novel, but it's a really great it's a really great Western, though.
Yeah, I want to dip my toe into that more. You know, definitely send me some like titles to check out for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah. I usually get in the Western mode in the summer. For some reason, in the middle of like July here, it's like so fucking hot and everything. It just feels like the appropriate time to put on like High Plains Drifter or whatever, you know?
Yeah, well, those are the the movie. I've seen a ton of movies. Like I love all the Clint Eastwood movies and the Sam Peckinpah movies, and Fulci did some westerns. Like I'm a huge film fan of westerns, but I just like the only real western-esque stuff I've read is, like I said, like the McCarthy stuff, and then also as Scott Zoller. Like he's a filmmaker, but he also wrote novels, and he's actually kind of like come under fire for his like sort of conservative views. I don't know, a couple of years ago, people were all irate with him. Um, but yeah, he writes great books though, and movies are awesome too, even though they might have some sort of right wing like bent to them.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with him, so I have to with his.
I'll send you
his
some.
books. Yeah.
I'll send you some references, and his movies too are great. Like, they're like throwbacks to the '70s. When people were rough around the edges. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And that's when movies were in the Wild West, which was like, I don't know, the best time. Like, part of the reason why the set movies from the '70s were so great is because there was no real like limits. They just people did what they want, did all kinds of shit.
Oh yeah,
shit.
you got James Caan, you got Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, you got all the classic guys like Donald Sutherland, these like great actors, Gene Hackman,
Clint
like they're
Eastwood.
like Clint Eastwood. They're like real people, they're not like actors are today. Like they look like someone you would see on the street somewhere.
Well, that's something that I always think about old movies. Like if you watch think about Don't Look Now with
Just saw that one. We just covered that on Necro, yeah.
Yeah, Donald Sutherland, right? And even who plays his wife? Like she's beautiful, but she's like a normal looking woman, and he's like
Absolutely.
a normal looking guy, And they're like the main characters of this movie are, two people. I think they were probably in their late 30s, maybe at the time, or
Probably,
early 40s. And it's like, or even a lot of Donald Sutherland movies. Think about Invasion of Body Snatchers is kind of the same way. And nobody in that is like a supermodel, right? And
No.
you just like it's like nowadays you don't really have every guy has to be like fucking chiseled or some shit, like
Invasion of the Body Snatchers had Jeff Goldblum in it too, which is another one of my favorite actors. I love him, man. And he's been around forever, man.
That was like one of his first big things. What always surprises me? I always forget that why am I blank? All of a sudden, I'm blanking on his name. Brad Dourif was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That's right. Yes, he plays the guy who kills himself at the end. I forgot his name, but that dude. Yeah.
I always forget that he's in that because Brad Dourif didn't really take off until the '90s.
No. Exorcist 3, X-Files, and then he had probably his biggest moneymaker was being in Lord of the Rings. That's probably what set him for life, really.
Between that and doing the voice of Chucky.
But I guarantee you that Lord of the Rings paycheck though is pretty sweet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I just always forget that he was in fucking because One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was like what 1968 or something or 70 or sometime like that.
It was it was probably like in the late 60s. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, I think so. Unless I'm totally wrong. I haven't actually seen that movie in a long time, but that came out in '75 actually. So
oh wow, okay, a little bit later down the line then. Okay,
I think the novel came out in the '60s. That's why I'm getting confused. But still, 1975, and Brad Dourif didn't take off until the early 2000s. You know what I mean?
Real quick about Body Snatchers. That also features probably one of my favorite actresses from that period is Veronica Cartwright.
She's great.
Also in Alien.
Yeah. I love her part in Invasion of Body Snatchers because she like figures out like she tries to like blend in with them and pretend like she's like also one of them and everything. It's great.
Yeah. That's the definitive Body Snatchers movie. That definitely. I know that movie's they remade that a bunch and there's different versions of it. That one and the original version, from the 50s. Those two I think are awesome. They're just great films.
Yeah, I saw both of them when I was a kid, and the second one really stuck in my mind. Like from the start, from Donald Sutherland, like being like, "It's a rat turd" or whatever, right at the start, to like the fucking creepy ass dog and like the dog with the man's face or whatever, and was just creepy as fuck. And then the ending, like
Ending's great.
that movie, like really, like I saw it when I was pretty young, and it stuck in my memory like to my whole life.
Also, remember Leonard Nimoy's in that too.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy plays the kind of pop psychologist guy. He's kind of
He's got
intolerable. Yeah,
he's got that weird leather like arm thing that he's wearing in that film in that too. He has this like leather glove gauntlet kind of thing. It's weird. I don't know why he has it on, but he's wearing that. But yeah, dude, Spotty Snatchers is such a great movie, man.
Yeah, didn't you guys cover the Necromaniacs, didn't you? With you and Mike? Yeah.
That was kind of the beginning of our like we have these certain actors that they're favorites. They're necro favorites. Donald Sutherland's one, Gene Hackman's one. You know, a lot of these like old school 70s actors, we're just like totally into them. You know what I mean? And we actually cut last week we did Clute, which isn't even a horror movie, but it just features Donald Sutherland in it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, it's a neo-noir. So if you stretch, it's a horror adjacent film. But we love Donald Sutherland so much that we just covered that movie. So
yeah, you guys cover neo-noir stuff though, like a lot of times on Necromaniacs.
Yeah, it fits. It fits the profile.
What was that one grimy grimy fucking police it was like a cop thriller, but it was like set in LA, like
Vice Squad.
Vice Squad, yep. Yeah.
Dude, the hell's the dude's name, man? Oh man, the guy who stars in it has he sings the theme song in it.
Oh really?
Yeah. But I got the guy's name, man. It's like City of Slime, or is the name of the song or whatever. That guy is up. He's in a lot of films too, like a lot of these like sleazy like crime movies. The fuck's the dude's name? Just give me a second here.
I wonder if that movie's been released on
Wings
Blu-ray
Hauser.
Wings
I hope
Hauser.
so. Wings Hauser, that's the guy. Also sings the title track. He sings it. It's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did I didn't know he sang it. I think that the only way I've watched this was on YouTube, like some shitty rip of it.
I don't remember how I watched it.
Yeah.
You know what? I have it on Blu-ray. That's why. That's how I watched it.
Yeah, it is on Blu-ray. Yep.
Yeah, that's how I have a copy of this on Blu-ray. That's how I watched it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so it is out. I just pulled it up on Amazon. I still need to pick up Nosferatu on Blu-ray. It looks like the price dropped, so that's good.
Okay, so that version that was released, right? The Eggers version of it.
Yep, it's out. It's only, I mean, there's like the theatrical, and then there's the extended. The extended's only like 5 minutes longer, but it's still
the one to get though, man.
Yeah, and you can get the 4K one for $27, and then the regular Blu-ray is $22. So it's not bad. And yeah, the regular Blu-ray is extended, so I'm gonna have to buy it. Pick this up. I almost never buy anything right when it comes out, like, because usually it drops. It's like full price, and then like you wait a couple weeks and it goes down to like $20.
Yeah, they get you in those early like impulse buys. You know, people are like, I gotta have it, and then it's just like you wait like a couple weeks later, and it's like, you know, at 20% off or something like that.
Yeah, one thing I'm kind of annoyed. Like, I've been waiting for Lost Highway Blu-ray 4K Blu-ray to go down. And looks like it has gone down now. There for a while, but during Christmas it was like on sale, but I just didn't have the money because I was going to buy it and Mulholland Drive. I was like, of course, when it goes down to like $20, I don't have the money to spend on this right a second.
Yeah, I have those. I have copies of those, but I don't have the Criterion. I have the Criterion for Lost Highway, but Mulholland Drive I want to get because that's like one of my favorites.
Yeah, I still need to. Lost Highway is like my favorite, so I really need to get that on Blu-ray on the Criterion. And then that one in Mulholland Drive I don't have. I have Blue Velvet, Inland Empire, Fire Walk with Me, because the Firewalk, like Fire Walk with Me was a present, but I was glad to get it because I'm happy to get any of the criterions for Lynch. So I still like outside of those ones, like I still need to get Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, Criterion, and then I will probably pick up Eraserhead at some point on Criterion as well.
I just watched Eraserhead again over the weekend. I had a big Lynch jamboree here at the house. Eraserhead, Wild at Heart, which I have on Blu-ray, and Fire Walk with Me. And Fire Walk with Me, man, it's like the Twin Peaks series is one thing, which is great. But Fire Walk with Me is so dark, man. It's like the movie itself, because it goes into, the whole murder of Laura Palmer. It's hard hitting, man. It's like a hard movie,
Oh yeah, yeah. The end of the movie, you're like the murder scene and everything. You're just like fuck. Like you're really relentless. Like yeah. Like yeah. It's not one I watch too often because of that. Because you just like it's really fucking dark. Like you really like. It's probably Lynch's darkest movie in a lot of ways. As far as like the ultimate feeling you walk away from it is pretty horrific. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it was important because Lynch, part of the reason Lynch wanted to do that was because Twin Peaks started getting a little too much like, I think he felt like people were thinking about too much, it was like too quirky.
Yeah.
Like people were getting too hung up on like the quirkiness of it, which is why we got Northern Exposure. You know what I mean? Which was basically like Twin Peaks without any of the darkness, like.
Right.
And, he was like, I want to get back to what the story's about, which is the murder of of Laura Palmer. Like he couldn't let it go, so he wanted to show that. And it seemed to piss people off when it came out because they wanted more quirky Twin Peaks, like coffee and cherry pie. And Lynch was like, no, we're done with that.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, I'm glad. I think that's one of his greatest films, in my opinion. And it's just like it's not one of my favorites, but it's like definitely. It's high in his, filmography, I think.
Yeah. And then the return, like, again, is like defies expectations. But I think the return is amazing. Like,
yeah, no, I think it's great too. Definitely.
There's so much in it. And particularly after listening to the Weird Studies stuff, where they talk about it, really, if you listen to their Weird Studies episodes they did about, particularly any David Lynch stuff, but particularly like the return, like it really made me understand it in a deeper way. And I don't know. I think that it's like really awesome. I mean, you're spending 18 hours in David Lynch's kind of mind in a way when you watch that.
Yeah,
It's great. And I love the mixture of it because there's some episodes like episode 8, which is like a return to Racerhead, and then you get like total fucking. There's like real comedy in it too. Like really, it's really funny, but it'll be really funny and then really fucking disturbing and creepy. Like the next scene, like it's awesome.
Yeah, I think they mentioned it in Weird Studies. They were talking about Eraserhead with the arm, like arms, and so that's what prompted me to rewatch Eraserhead. So there's Mary's father talks about his arm going numb.
Yeah,
and that comes back in Twin Peaks, and the arm going numb and this whole thing with that. So it's almost like Eraserhead and Twin Peaks are in the same universe in some ways, maybe.
I think I actually think that the core Lynch stuff is kind of in the same universe. So I think Eraserhead, Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, possibly Blue Velvet even, are all kind of in the same type of Lynch world in a way, because there's a lot of similar things. So like another recurring motif that recurs in a lot of his stuff is flashing lights or lightning things when the weird stuff happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like in Lost Highway, when he transforms, you're in the middle of, you have like this strange storm and there's like this light and there's all this crazy shit. And that's when the same thing, like when what's his name is taken, he's taken by the mystery man. Balthazar Getty character is taken by the mystery man when the thunderstorm's going on, lightning's going on, right? and at the end when everything falls apart, the lightning is happening again. You see that lightning and Eraserhead. You see that lightning and Twin Peaks. It's in return a lot. Like anytime the entities are introduced into the world, like there's lightning involved or flashing lights and stuff like that. So
There's two lines in Eraserhead that I can almost hear David Lynch's voice like saying the lines. Like when the dinner scene, when Henry's at the house, the mother is like, "So Mary says you're a really nice fellow." Like you can hear David Lynch actually saying that. And then there's like another scene where the father is like, "Henry, what do you know?" Like,
yeah, that's totally Lynch.
It's
Yeah.
like totally the way I imagine him speaking to people, you know?
Yeah. The that dinner scene is so uncomfortable.
Dude.
Like
Most of the movie's uncomfortable actually, but
Yeah.
yeah, that particularly.
how do you cut him like Rager chicken? Yep, just like Rager chicken. And it's just so like nasty and like
Dude.
and the mom's like doing like this stuff with her eyeball and it's so uncomfortable and she's like, "Have you guys had like relations or whatever?" Like
He's like, she braces him up. "Have you had sexual relations?"
yeah.
The score, I mean, the score is like awesome, man. Score to that film is like so cool. It sounds like a Throbbing Gristle record or something, you know?
It does. I mean, have you ever listened to it by itself? Like the 2-track
Yeah.
it's awesome. Like David Lynch was ahead of his time, really. I mean, I think the only person who's doing something like Lou Reed did the Metal Machine music a couple years before that. You had a few Music Concrete people have been operating, you know, like since the 50s, but Lynch was like taking that and making it like industrial, like drone music, basically
Yeah.
a decade before Lessmore and stuff, you know what I mean?
The I just pre-ordered the Texas Chainsaw Massacre score too, down Waxworks Works.
Are they actually putting out a score for it finally?
Yeah, they were able to get master it, like just the isolated score. Because I know that was like a big thing, like for why it was never released. So for the first time, you can get the isolated score. So that's it'll be streaming too eventually. But I ordered the vinyl, I pre-ordered it, and that
That's
score
awesome.
too is also another just noise and bizarre sounds and industrial sounds and things like that.
Oh yeah, some of those sounds in that movie are in your head forever. Like the opening one, the sound like
Yeah,
as soon
apparently
as
that's
you
the
hear
sound
that.
of like the sound of a camera or something like that, I think.
Yeah, it's like a camera sound, but it's like turned into like a fucking nightmare sound. The way he
Yeah.
produced, yeah, just that one is just amazing how it's put together. Like again, very ahead of his time. There was some of that going on at the time, though. A lot of that kind of avant-garde movie score stuff in the 70s.
With Toby Hooper though, I kind of feel like it was more out of necessity than creativity. You know what I mean? It was more like we need to make a score. We don't have any money. Let's do it this way. You know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, it's funny because like a while back on Necromaniacs, I interviewed the guy who made that movie Sator.
Yeah, I remember that, and he said that like he
had no
never listened to
idea.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because like you listen to the score and it sounds like the swans and like like sun and stuff like that. And he's just, I never heard any of that stuff.
yeah.
And
He's just like had this idea for the score about like a bass and like bought stuff to make sounds. You're like, okay,
which I think was even cooler that he made this like really cool like experimental record like that.
yeah. One thing I always think is cool is that Stanley Kubrick apparently before he made Shining had his whole crew watch Eraserhead multiple times because he like wanted them to because that was the vibe he wanted for The Shining. And then you think about like the score that Wendy Carlos did for it, like it has that same there's a lot of droning like creepy stuff going on in The Shining score as well. It's because it's an electronic score for a lot of it. Yeah. And then you think about, I feel like you can kind of see a little bit of Razorhead in The Shining when you know that, you know.
Sure. Well, yeah, that's pretty much the episode, man. It's,
Yeah.
got the bonus material at the end here. We talked about all this other stuff. So,
Yeah, I'm sure people like that part of it too. Some.
yeah.
So I,
But yeah, I'm real hyped up about this Robert E. Howard stuff that I just ordered. So I'm excited to get that. It should be showing up any day now.
yeah, I want to have some extra cash. I'm never gonna pick those up for sure. Probably next month I'll have some extra money, so gotta pick those up. Oh yeah, the one last thing is that Chiroptera, obviously they since we last did our episode, they agonizing resurrection of Dr. Victor Frankenstein from Thomas Ligotti is on sale now for a pretty
Yep.
affordable price. It's only like $60, which is a good
Yeah.
deal. And then Jay just announced today that the volume 2 of the H. Lovecraft Hypocatemus Press reissues is coming out is going to be on pre-order on Friday. So
With ST Joshi, notes and all that sort of stuff in there.
yes, the original ones that he edited, and I guess yeah. So
That's how I met him. I met him at Nightlands.
yeah, I remember telling me that. That's pretty cool. Like
Exciting.
yeah, he's like the biggest guy in Lovecraft world. I read the one volume version of his biography of Lovecraft years ago, but
Yeah.
I want to pick up that 2 volume like monster biography that he put out.
Oh yeah.
Like
I'm trying to. The title of it escapes me though. Yeah, he's the man, and also just in general, even like Clark Ashton Smith, like he's like real knowledgeable about that. But he's definitely the authority on Lovecraft. And
yeah, sometimes
yeah,
I don't. Sometimes I don't agree with some of his opinions about stories. Like he has a problem with like Dreams in the Witch House and stuff, but he, as far as like the knowledge of the stories, like and of Lovecraft, there's nobody better than him. You know what I mean?
yeah, through all that Cadabra, Chiroptera Press, all my friendship with those guys, I got to meet some really cool people like ST Joshi and John Paget actually, who is the sort of guardian of the Ligotti estate, really.
Yep, and the guy who does all the Ligotti audiobooks.
It's
Yeah.
to the point. It's to the point where when I read a Thomas Ligotti story, I read it in John Paget's voice.
Yeah, it's
You know what I mean?
yeah, it's always funny listening to because I have all of his audiobooks, and I also bought his audiobook for his own book, the Secret Ventriloquism book.
Yeah, that's a cool book, collection of short stories.
I've listened to I think the first couple of stories. They're pretty cool. I do
Yeah.
like his stories.
And you can check him out on an earlier episode of Everything Went Black too. I had Paget on a while back, last year,
Yeah.
I think, or 2 years ago, and he'll be returning at some point this year.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good. It'd be a good time to have him back on since they're getting all the Ligotti stuff back in print and
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
yeah. So I hope he does audiobook for. I hope that he's able to do audiobooks for the Frankenstein ones coming out, and also for Teatro Grotesco when they put that out. That'd be cool.
Oh yeah, I had this concept of asking John to do some sort of spoken passage on the new Tombs record, because there's like the record's already recorded and we're almost done mixing it right now. But I had this like noise piece, this like ambient piece that I wanted to have John read something over it.
Oh,
But
that'd be sick.
yeah, but I didn't come together. It was I didn't even ask him because I wasn't happy with any of the writing I had for the part. And if I was going to ask him to read something, I want it to be like my best efforts.
Right. That would be a sick idea, though. Maybe for the next album, or
Yeah, yeah.
if you
I'll
do
start
like
working on it. I'll start working on it now.
maybe like an EP or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
yeah. All right,
Awesome.
man. So yeah, part 2 of this will be coming out on Soul Knox next month. So yeah, we gotta get into the rest of this book.
Oh yeah, one last thing is the Braxis Horn is on streaming on Spotify. So
That's right. How could I forget? That just that just came up today.
yep. So people should go check that out. That you did with Brandon and Matt Prizo. It's good. It's finally on Spotify. Like just makes it a little easier, just like to stream or whatever. Like
I think that was kind of like by design, though, on Brandon's part. I think he wanted to release the physical and offset it with the release of the digital versions. You know what I mean? Like the streaming versions of the record.
Yeah, yeah, I think you waited, which works out. I mean, I bought the CD as well, so bought the CD from him and on Bandcamp and everything. So I mean, I can just stream it on Bandcamp, but what makes it good for me for on Spotify front is that I can put on into like my radio shows if I want to or things like that. So,
no, totally.
but people should definitely go check it out, particularly if you like this kind of shit. It's great, dark music. So it's good music to put on when you're gonna read some weird fiction, right?
Definitely, man. And it was real fun. I'm really happy that those guys asked me to be part of this thing. You know, like Brandon, his older Abraxas horn material, he just keeps, it's all different too, man. Between the first thing he did, the single, and then this thing, it's all different. There's a huge bandwidth of ideas that he's working with. And then Matt Prizzo is like one of the most prolific guys I know as far as like cranking out material, being it either his music or his incredible artwork. And his artwork just keeps like I ordered something from, I have a piece I bought a piece from him recently. And
Cool.
yeah, and it's like when I move, I'm going to hang everything. We don't have any artwork hung up in our townhouse here because we're only going to be here for a few more months. But just his artwork keeps getting exponentially better with every time I see something that he posts. It's just like taking another huge step forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely the proof of the pudding of like putting in the work, you're going to get better. You know what I mean? Like he draws and paints every single day, and you can see the results if you look at the early. He's always been good, but you look at the earliest stuff, the way he's doing now, it's just like crazy the amount of technique that he's developed. So
yeah,
I think, and he's basically, I think he's become like the resident horseman artist. Because I mean, I basically everything I do is Matt Prizzo art nowadays, like literally.
Yeah, no, totally, dude. Yeah.
So.
You know, yeah, I would maybe down the line there's like a Tombs or some. I'm almost done with a new Scorpion Throne record too. So that maybe Matt, maybe I'll hire him to do some artwork for one of those things too. You know.
Yeah, I always just tell Matt like when he's done this stuff for my Verkolkas albums, I just send him like the music and tell him like the vibe and some of the ideas I have, and then just let him like roll. And he always comes up with something really cool. So
yeah. Right before we started talking tonight, I finished up the ending of there's 4 songs in the new Scorpion Throne, so it's an EP, and I finished writing the ending of one song, and I literally have just the ending of one of the last song to complete. So the basic songs ideas will be all hammered out, and then we're going to record them for real. And then of course I have to finish writing the lyrics for those things. So hopefully by the summer everything will be out with that on Bandcamp.
sick.
Yeah,
I'm going. Drew Goss and I are gonna with our project. We're pretty soon are gonna be dropping a 2-track demo of 2 of their first couple songs, and he redid the drums for him and stuff. And then we're gonna start working on an actual EP because I'm trying to upgrade my guitar stuff because I wasn't. I'm gonna join the model world and actually get into some modeling because I want to have the options. You know what I mean? Like,
that's great, man.
Yeah,
definitely. That's a wave of the future.
The problem is if you only got like a certain amount of money and you want to be able to get different guitar tones and different bass tones, you're kind of like, that's the way to go, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I like the bias stuff. That stuff is like sounds great. I think that's like probably the best you can get really for the amount of money it costs. It's only like dollars or something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely try to get. Yeah, I'll have to ask you offline at some point about what you use because I'm trying to figure out right now. Like so. Because I just want to have like more options like with sounds and and also I know this the type of guitar tones I want. It's just I need to have something that lets me get that. You know what I mean? But I don't really want to spend like $2,000 on a tube amp and then have to spend another $300 on one of those things where you can actually like plug it straight into your. because you can buy a tube amp, like say for example, like I really like the PV or the EVH, like 5150, right?
Yeah.
You can buy a 50-watt version of that for like $1,000, but then to really utilize that recording, if you can't like be blaring through a cabinet, you have to buy one of those. You can I can't think what the term is, but you can plug the speaker output from the head into this box that then you can plug that into your.
Yeah, it's like a buffer. It's like it takes because for example, if you got 50 watts, right? It's out when you crank it. It's like a heat sink for that 50-watt output, and then you can drop the voltage down so that you're getting a line voltage signal or something like that. I think. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and that works really well for a lot of people. It's just, but those boxes they usually have like a cab simulator on them, and they're usually like $300, right? So it's like at least right now they'll probably go down with time, but I'm like, or I could just get the modeling for now. And I mean, I love tube amps, but a lot of these models sound exactly the same nowadays.
If you go with the modeling software, you got every single amp there is. You got Marshalls. You got, depending on, for example, I like the bias system that they have.
Yeah.
So you'll have like their version of the rectifier, the EVH 5150, like the angle, then you'll have like Fender Twins and Marshalls and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bass amps, all that stuff's all on there. And it's like under $200, you get all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm about to get new computers like next month. So once I get a new computer, I'm gonna really jump into like the software modeling, because then it's like because I like the PV, I like Fender, because I like the bass, particularly for clean or for like doing a post punk or goth stuff.
Yeah.
Like Fender's the way to go. And then it's like you get it all, and then you can try out new amps. So like you said, I could try out. Let's see how the Angle sounds. I know a lot of black metal guys love the Angle Fireball. Yeah.
Yep. I played one in Europe on like a festival, like it was part of the backline that they had. But I never owned one, but they're pretty sick. Like when I over there as a rental, they're really cool.
They're pretty expensive, I think. So.
Oh yeah, they're definitely. I can't justify buying any more amps, honestly, right now.
You for live, you just do you use a 5150 or is it a 6150?
I have the EVH 5150 now.
Cool.
I used that on the last tour that we did, the Pro Fanatica tour. Prior to that, I had the PV 5150, and then I had the dual rectifier, which I used for a long time. So I still got those. I still have all three of those heads. So that's what I mean. Like what am I going to do? Want to buy like another high output, high gain, head? Like,
yeah,
what I mean? Like the Angle, I think I got it covered on that level. This guy, I just found out about another amp called Omega, that the guy who does all the tech work for me and Dan, my other guitar player, this guy Jim, excellent tech in Jersey here. He has an Omega head, and it's just cool. It's like, it sounds great. Like I plug my guitar through it after he finished doing the setup on it. It's just like, so like, just want another boutique amp. They're custom made. Like you order them. So there you go. I'm not going to spend like $4,000 on a head. Like I can't justify doing that, especially since I said I have like 3 other amps. You know what I mean? So it's like, but it looks cool. Like it's black on black. Like there's like an Omega symbol on it. You know what I mean? It just looks sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but what you're like, I already got like a couple $1,000 amps. I don't really need to buy a.
No, man. Like, as much as I'm like thinking, like scheming a way to like get the money together, I'm like, I can't. I want to try to buy a house this year, man. I can't afford to like buy like 2 like high output heads at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's the danger of guitars. I also really like pedals. I kind of like sold a couple pedals I wasn't using this year, but I'm gonna replace with other stuff. But
yeah,
I always watch the JHS show on YouTube. Have you ever watched that? Like the guy from JH. I love that. Like he's like telling you how to really use all those pedals and stuff. Like that guy has a crazy pedal like collection, but it's pretty.
Yeah, it's real informative, definitely. And I like that Does It Chug
Ola England, yeah.
Ola England. That channel's great. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's a funny guy too, but that's like a really cool channel.
Yeah, and I found another channel. It's like a black metal guy, Dev Gahill, I think his name is. Let me double check. He's like this British Indian guy, and yeah, Dev Gohill. You should check him out. I'll send you one of his videos.
Yeah, totally.
He specializes in like black metal stuff. I think he's actually he did stuff with Snora from Thorns. Like they did like this whole thing, like a kind of how like they wrote like a song and like kind of like walked everybody through like their songwriting processes and all this stuff. It was pretty cool. But he has awesome. A lot of this kind of stuff. He's like into like showing like black metal like gear and tone. And one thing I was watching of his recently was trying to figure out the tunings for. He's like talking about the tunings of like some of the early black metal stuff and how like some of them are just weird. Like they're like Demasterius Dom Sathanas, for example, is not E standard or E flat. Is somewhere like somewhere kind of in between somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, this because they didn't use real tune. I mean, I didn't use a tune.
Did it by ear, I guess, right?
I didn't use a tuner until like the late 90s, I don't think. I mean, when did you start using like an electric tuner?
Right away. Like when I started doing like playing live and stuff, like being in bands, like I always had a tuner, Yeah. But that's because you're playing with other people, you know what I mean? It's just like you got to all be in tune and make records and things like that, recordings.
Yeah. But I'm sure a lot of those guys back in the late 80s, early 90s were, or if they were like, another thing too is that some of those bands were doing, say, like E standard in a weird frequency range. So that is the other thing. Like it's like E standard, but like 434 frequency range, or
right?
Something.
Yeah,
like something kind of weird. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's kind of, but this guy's like that kind of detail, which I
well, send me a link,
yeah.
Man. That sounds like right up my alley.
Yeah, I think you like his stuff, but hell yeah, the guitar stuff is awesome. We still need to do a guitar episode because I did that one with Brandon. I always wanted to do one with you at some point for Solnox. It's an on again, off again series. Yeah, we got a few things in still want to do Northman. And yeah, we should definitely do a guitar episode too. So
yeah, that one. Yeah, I've been like trying to make time to watch the Northman again. Sometimes like I either got to watch things when I'm by myself, or I got to convince the lady to check something out with me too. But she's in love with Alexander Skarsgård, so
it's like probably easy to convince her. Yeah,
so I think she'll be down. So yeah,
yeah. So definitely have to do that, and then it'd be cool to do a guitar episode and talk about your gear throughout the years and how you're. I like Brandon's was pretty simple because he pretty much bought like what he uses to this day, like first, but a lot of I feel like I've gone through a lot of different changes with like gear, and I know other people have. So
oh yeah. I mean, especially within Tombs, man. Like in the early days, I used a lot more effects than I do now. Now I don't use anything hardly ever. I just use like noise gate and like a delay and a reverb. That's it, and a phase, a chorus pedal. That's it. But
yeah.
But it'd be cool to talk about the different amps and the settings and different types of distortion pedals and all that kind of stuff too, and even the different effects pedals, the different reverbs and that I've tried and abandoned and not used anymore, and modulating effects, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll definitely have to do that pretty here and near soon. It's kind of that's like a series, it's like sometimes you start a series where you're like, it's going to be off and on throughout time. Eventually, depending on who I do episodes with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally, man.
So yeah, we'll have to do that after we do Northman.
Hell yeah. All right, man. Well, have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care now.
Good night, dude.
Good night.